The Cell, not to be confused with the Stephen King film Cell. The Cell is a 2000 science fiction horror psychological thriller with a little bit of police, well, not just a little bit, there's a decent amount of police investigative work that goes into this film. So it's kind of a mix of different genres, but it works very well. Now, it has recently received a very impressive 4K UHD release through Arrow Video. This is a limited edition set. We're going to take a look at the contents of this packaging here, and we're going to talk about the film. I'm going to talk about the 4K transfer, and eventually going to rate the film on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the highest and 5 being no. 1's going to be the lowest and 5's going to be the highest. But if you would do me a favor and go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. I think this film is probably when most people think about The Cell, they probably think about this dream sequence where there's this horse that gets kind of split into different sections through this glass and it takes it apart. It's pretty gnarly. And things kind of happen like that in this year 2000. And there's several films where now computer animation was, during this time period, computer animation was just kind of really getting its footing, and these filmmakers were kind of pushing the limits on what they could do. But there was like another film, 13 Ghosts, that had a similar type of scene with people getting cut in half and seeing it slide down this glass and all that. But here it's a horse, so it's pretty gnarly. It's kind of, I mean, since it is computer animation, luckily it kind of looks a little bit fake, but it's pretty gross. But to get to that, now this film is also famous for its dream sequences, because there are a pretty good bit of dream sequences, especially in the second half of the film. Now the cast here is pretty impressive, with the cast including Jennifer Lopez, Vince Vaughn, and Vincent D'Onofrio as the main three characters. But the supporting cast is pretty nice as well. It has several character actors in the cast, like Dylan Baker, Jake Weber, and James Gammon, to name a few. Also Dean Norris. Now Dean Norris played Hank on Breaking Bad, but it has a pretty nice, solid supporting cast to help with this film. The main character, played by Jennifer Lopez. Now I've never, thinking about it, especially thinking about this time period, and Jennifer Lopez, I never really thought she was that good of an actress. Now I'm going to walk that back a little bit here in just a second, but I did see her in Anaconda, and I thought she was fine in Anaconda, and there's she did a bunch of kind of rom-coms that just didn't appeal to me at the time. So her being in The Cell, it kind of, I don't know, I didn't didn't take it serious. I didn't take her serious as an actress, but I will say that I do like her performance in this. I think she pulls it off very well. She's very likable. She has a very, very strong presence and a very motherly presence. And then later on, that kind of changes a little bit. But I do like her. I do like her in general in this film, and I think I probably have a better appreciation for her acting. Even thinking about Anaconda, I do think she had a really nice screen presence there. As far as her character in this film, she plays the protagonist, and she is a child psychologist. She's trying to help this one kid who's in a coma. And by doing this, they're doing this kind of science fiction thing. They have a virtual reality thing set up where they put this suit on her and a suit on the kid. Now, this suit, it looks a lot like, you ever seen Dracula? The one with Gary Oldman at the very beginning. He has that kind of red Twizzler-looking suit on. It looks like someone's wearing Twizzlers. That's what they look like. Here it is. See that? But it actually doesn't look as silly as that. I kind of think it looks kind of cool. But they put these suits on, and then they levitate into the air, and then it's like she enters into his dreams. So she's able to go into his dreams and interact with him in his dreams. And she's trying to get him out of the coma, the kid. And that's kind of how that's set up. Now, I know what you're probably, I don't know if you're thinking this, but I was definitely thinking this right away. For anyone who's seen this, and I've seen this film probably way too many times, Dreamscape, that was the first thing that I thought of while watching this. So that's how the first part of the film is set up. We see some pretty impressive looking dreams that take place in a desert. There's kind of a dune area where that kid hangs out. And it looks pretty cool, but then get into the meat and potatoes of this thing. There is a serial killer, and this guy is sick. He's played by Vincent D'Onofrio, and it's fairly disturbing what he does. But he kidnaps these women, and then he puts them in this tank, like a almost like a fish aquarium like tank, and then they think they've been kidnapped. But really, what he does, he doesn't even go in there. He like, this all happens automatically, and eventually the water starts to come into it, and then they drown. And then he comes out and he takes their bodies out. He bleaches their bodies and he puts them on a table. And then he's got these like hooks, like he's got sewn into his back, and he levitates himself up and he masturbates looking at their dead body while playing the footage of them dying. And it's pretty disturbing. Now, there are two versions here in this limited edition set. There is the theatrical cut and the director's cut. In the director's cut, the only really difference is there's about 2 minutes added in, and it's all this stuff with him taking the body out and doing all this horrible stuff to it. So that didn't quite make the cut. I guess it is really gross, but it kind of makes this film stand out in a more of a theatrical or cinematic way. Now, once it gets further into the plot, it becomes more of the police trying to track this guy down. Vince Vaughn plays Special Agent Peter Novak, and what his character is involved with these other police, including Jake Weber plays his partner, and James Gammon comes with him. I think he may be like a superior detective, but he's kind of overseeing everything as they're trying to track down this serial killer. Meanwhile, the serial killer, Carl Starger, gets another victim. He follows this lady who's engaged, newly engaged. I think she's about to get married, and he follows her to this parking lot and tricks her. He's got like a dog, and she thinks she hit his dog, and he comes out and he puts a paper. I guess he like knocks her out or something, maybe chloroform, something like that. But he ends up, kidnapping her and putting her in the tank. But then he goes back to his house. Meanwhile, these police detectives, like Vince Vaughn's character and all those other guys, they're tracking him down, and they're starting to figure it out, because in his latest victim, he left a hair from the dog in the victim, so they got that, and they figure out, they track it down through the dog. It's a rare albino dog, so they're able to figure out where he is. And when they go to his house, he has some kind of a seizure sort of thing, and he ends up in a coma. And then when they get into his house, he's just on the floor in a coma. It's similar to the kid, but so he has a rare form of schizophrenia that is made up just for this film. It's called Wayland's infraction, where he goes into this coma, the schizophrenic coma, and he's apparently never going to get out of it. And according to the film, it's something that happens. It's rare, but it happens. So here we are. So what are we going to do? We have a victim they have to find. There's water. It's going to fill up and drown this victim if they don't find her. So they go to Jennifer Lopez's character, Catherine Dean. They go to her facility, and they have to talk her into going into the psychopath or the schizophrenic psychopath's mind and try to figure out where the latest kidnapped victim is before she drowns. So this is about halfway through the film. She starts going into his dreams, and it becomes a kind of a dreamscape situation. Like, she goes into his dreams and sees like him as a kid, and the kid his kid is sympathetic, and she sees him getting abused by his dad as a kid. But then when she sees him in adult form, Vincent D'Onofrio looks completely. He keeps coming every time it shows him. He has like a different sort of thing. One time he has these horns on his head, and he's just kind of like the boss of his dreamscape, and it becomes kind of a challenge. So she comes out, and then she has to go back in. But really, like most of this film, and where this film really soars in especially in 4K HDR, these dream sequences, they look friggin' fantastic in 4K. But really, most of the movie looks pretty good in 4K. And we'll talk a little bit more about the transfer here in just a bit. But I do want to go ahead and crack open this thing. So let's get this out. So there's the outside cover, and here's the inside. Now, there's a different artwork here on the inside cover than the outside. I actually prefer this outside cover. This is pretty, I don't know, this is okay. It's kind of cool, but this is Vincent D'Onofrio's character the first time you see him in the dream sequence, and he comes in with this weird hair thing and this big flowy blue robe thing. Now, this is rare for Arrow release. Now, not only is there the 4K UHD release, but there is also a Blu-ray disc in here. That is not normally happen for Arrow. They usually just will release either a 4K by itself or a Blu-ray by itself. And the reason for that being is the Blu-ray is not the same transfer as the 4K. It is a color-graded version where a lot of times there's a different color grading. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. I will mention something else here on the 4K release of the director's cut of the film. Now, I've seen a lot of people online really upset about this, but there is a part in it where it goes in about 15 minutes in. It goes into this dream sequence, the second dream sequence with the kid, and you see the dunes, like the sand dunes, and it's this big flowy shot that goes through the air, and then it lands on her, and then it repeats. So it goes twice. So there's some kind of error in the director's cut where there's a repeated shot, and it's in there. I saw it. It's not a deal killer for me. I'm not going to let that influence my rating of the film. I will say it's a minor annoyance. And they're probably going to, I'm sure they're going to put out a corrected disc, but it doesn't kill it for me. And the other, another thing, they've put out a director's cut and a theatrical cut. So the theatrical cut, you can watch it without that. But this is during that sequence, though. This is during the theatrical, in the director's cut sequence that is different than the other cut, and that's why it's there, probably because that's when all the added stuff is in the film. But some people are very upset about that, and they're probably never going to buy Arrow again because of it. But back to this one, on this color graded version. Like, there's a scene, for instance, they all go into, like, not all of them, but it's like the three detective guys, like Vince Vaughn's character and James Gammon and Jake Weber, go into this kind of a lab. In the regular one, it all looks pretty natural, but in the graded one, it looks like just really blue, like blue as shit. It's like, wow, I was like fast forwarding through, just looking at, I was kind of piecing, going through different scenes, seeing where they look substantially different. And there is a lot of that going on where they just add a blue to a scene that would be a naturally colored. They kind of add a little blue to it to try to make you feel a little different, make you feel blue, I guess. And then they grade the dream sequences even more than they already are. They already have a fairly substantial grading of some sort on there, but they even added more like amberish or whatever colors going on. So that's kind of, it's a very interesting look at what the director did after the fact, and it is not reflected on either on the original disc for the theatrical or the director's cut version. A couple other things in here. There's a poster. Now the poster here is double-sided. It's got both of the new artwork pieces on it. There's that one, which is on the front cover of the slip cover, and then this one that is on the inside. And there's also a booklet. Well, there's a booklet here, and it has really a lot of essays. People have written stuff about it. A lot of times, there's some pictures in here too. A lot of times I don't dig really deep in these essays because I don't want it to influence what I say, because it definitely would. A lot of times you have a better appreciation for the film after you read all this. And I did kind of skim it a little bit, but I just didn't want to dive deep into the essays. There's some card here for an upcoming release from Arrow. And that's really all that's inside of here, but it's a pretty impressive release. I'm especially impressed that Arrow put 2 discs in here. Now, I'm sure they'll be replacing that 1 disc because of that shot issue. So eventually what happens is Jennifer Lopez's character, Dr. Catherine Dean, gets trapped in the dream. If you start believing that it's true, then you can get trapped in there. And the serial killer guy, by the way, Vincent D'Onofrio is fantastic in this. He's really scary, but he's so overpowering that he makes her submit to him. And another thing that he does to his victims is he kind of turns them into dolls after he's killed them. Once she's walking through some of the dreams, she sees the victims, in their positions of the doll positions, how he killed them and how he dressed them up, and they're walking around. It's pretty crazy. But she eventually, he puts a collar on her. That's what he puts a collar on her, on his victims after he kills them, kind of like he's caught them and he's made them his. So he puts one on her and she's trapped in the dream. So they do have a way for a third person to go into the dream. They tested out in the past, but it never worked too good. But Vince Vaughn's character, the special agent Peter Novak, he goes ahead and puts suits up and goes in there to try to save her, but it doesn't all necessarily go too good for him. He has some trouble in there as well. It's a pretty touch and go there for a while. Now, I'm not going to go into everything that happens, but we're going to say that there are some very cool visuals within these dream sequences. It's very impressive work. And I'll do like the mixture of the different genres as it goes from one to the other, and then they collide at the end. I think it all goes together pretty good. As far as the 4K transfer, I did look at the Blu-ray, and then I looked at the 4K, and I mean clearly the Blu-ray's got some grading on it. But if you want to talk about like things to like the black levels or the texture on people's skins and things, I didn't see a big jump in that sort of thing when it comes to the 4K compared to the Blu-ray. What I did see better was the HDR, which is the high dynamic range on the flesh tones and things of that nature. So, and they makes it look more realistic, and HDR looks very nice here. It all looks really nice. I just didn't see like a big. It wasn't jumping out like especially a lot of the scenes were muted earlier on in the first half, because when they're in the dreams, it's a whole different ball game. But I think it's intentionally muted to kind of keep the difference between the vivid dreams and the kind of muted reality. But I'm going to go ahead and do some ratings here. I'm going to rate the film. I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. I'm leaning towards a 4. I think it's a lot better than I thought it was back in the day. And if you didn't watch the film, even if you did see it, you may want to give it another look. But if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend taking a look at it. I think and I think like Jennifer Lopez is really good in it. I really think she does this character well. And even like later on, after she gets the collar put on her and Vince Vaughn goes into the dream, she's looking all like trying to seduce him, and I really like her look there. This is a pretty awesome look. But this release, I'm going to go ahead and give Arrow a 4-star release for this. I think it's a nice release. There is, like I say, there's some problems with that one repeated shot, but I'm not going to give them like a bad review for this, because I think they, like I was saying, there's a lot here, and if you're going to let that one shot, like say like screw Arrow or whatever, I don't know, but I mean that's your prerogative. But clearly we're paying a lot for these limited editions and all that. We're paying a lot for them, but at the same time, we got to cut these guys some slack. They're pumping out these things, and they're doing terrific work on what they're doing with these releases. Now, if you would go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.